Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you there, and yet you are going back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light." After he had said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better." Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. And for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha answered, "I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who has come into the world." After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. "The teacher is here," she said, "and is asking for you." When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but he was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying?" Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. "Take away the stone," he said. "But Lord," said Martha, the sister of the dead man, "by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been dead 4 days." Then Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I know that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in strips of linen and cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Being late can come with anxiety. The feeling of rushing to get to a destination, of wondering how late is too late. That can sit in your chest. There also can be anxiety for the people who might be waiting for you, wondering if you're going to show, wondering if you'll make it on time, and the fear that you won't. Of course, I'm not referring to a smaller being late, like running a little late for a meeting or being fashionably late to a party. For me, one memory of being late came up where I remembered the time I was trying to get a visa for my study abroad to France. I was told I had to go to the nearest French embassy for a visa appointment, which for me in San Diego meant going to LA on the Amtrak, because I didn't have a car. It was going to be hours long, I think 4 to 5 to get there, and I was nervous because it was an embassy and really official, and you had to get all of your documents and things like that all together and make sure you had them all. But I got on the train headed to LA for the first time. I wasn't like a regular LA Amtrak user, so I was figuring that all out as well. And on the trip, all of a sudden, the train stops. Which I'm sure many of us are familiar with traveling on the T, that sometimes trains stop. So this train stopped, and was stopped, and was stopped. And I was just waiting. And time passed, and it was stopped. Eventually, they said over the sound system that there was a delay. And I don't quite remember how I found out, whether I Googled it or they had said it over the system. But I found out that somebody just left a van parked on the Amtrak tracks. No one was in it, of course. It obstructed the path, the trains, that obstructed my commute to LA. And the delay ended up being hours. But of course, as a serious and prepared traveler that I am, I left a good amount of cushion time. However, the cushion time was dwindling down, and after so long of sitting on a train, sometimes you just gotta give up on ever really trying to get to your destination at a certain time, because it's out of your hands. But I was thinking of that, and also the fact that I had a hard time scheduling this appointment, and I didn't know if I could schedule another one in time. I had already been on the great journey of getting on to the Amtrak for multiple hours to LA, and the time for my appointment was getting closer and closer. By the time I finally made it to LA and was off the train, I still had to get to the office. And by this time, I just took an Uber because any more traveling plans were right out the window. And I knew it was dire when my Uber's ETA was 10 to 20 minutes past my appointment time already. I was so close, so close. If I had just rushed and hurried a little bit more, maybe. And somehow the Uber driver was just able to instinctively tell that I was in crisis. And so when I got into the back of the Uber, he immediately switched the music to Adele. And at that point, it was like we were coming ever so closely. I was on the verge of tears of stress, listening to Adele, knowing that my fate was probably sealed and I was going to be late. But maybe the embassies have grace, right? I gotta try. However, likely not. And when I got to the embassy, and I was in fact late, they turned me away. I remember just standing in the stairwell of the building and just having like a wide stare, decompressing a moment of just, wow, this happened, this hours-long journey. But also, ooh, I still have to fix this somehow. And the emotional release of all the stress was waiting to come, but all of a sudden I was numb, and I just had to leave the building and began aimlessly walking around Beverly Hills, which apparently is where the embassy is, feeling very small and out of place and disappointed. So I made my sad little trek home to the train station and then taking the train for several hours again this time, without grand halts, taking another bus to my dorm, and finally laying in my bed for the night. That was a terrible, emotional, situational, and physical journey of being late. But you could see the consequences of not making my appointment by slim chance. I was able to make another in time, and then going on the trek all again, and it was successful. Things were repaired. I had the opportunity to try again. But when it comes to someone's life hanging in the balance, there is a too late. Whereas we're humans and mortal and limited in power, there's nothing we can do to stop it. There's no making another trip. And that's the magnanimity that Mary and Martha, Lazarus' sisters, are facing when they ask for Jesus to come. They understand how slim, how close the chance. The percentages aren't really in their favor. But when Lazarus becomes ill enough to die, their hope is that Jesus, who has the power that is beyond the human, that is beyond miraculous, would be able to step in the last moments and stop it from happening. But have an emphasis on preventing and stopping because they understand the finality of death. And when one considers lateness, I also came upon the meaning of late as a description of one who had recently passed away. The late blank, which is often found in obituaries. Is it a late Lazarus or the late Jesus? Because Jesus hears about Lazarus being ill. And in the way that he says, this will not end in death, but for God's glory, for the Son to be glorified. It all sounds a little bit planned. Or it does sound planned. And that's a little bit into the paradox that we can't understand as being people in time. How God can both be in person in time and yet know what the plan is, even with all the possibilities. But even if this was a plan, as it sounds, then Jesus let a man die because Lazarus died. And they made sure to mention that by the time Jesus had got there, he had already been in the tomb for days. They said, don't open the door because you'll let the smell out. Lazarus died when Jesus had been healing people up and down the land. And he was too late. And Mary and Martha grieved. They felt what it felt like to be scared that their brother was dying, to see him die. And for the one hope that they had left in Jesus coming to save him, dying as well. And from what we can tell, at least by what's in Scripture, Martha seems to be taking it pretty well with her relationship with Jesus. She still comes out to meet him, even though Mary stays at home. She acknowledges Jesus' relationship with the Father. And when Jesus first tells her that Lazarus will rise again, she's like, oh yeah, the resurrection, I know. Holding on, that time will come, I know. She's still trusting her faith. But she doesn't even comprehend or stop to think that Lazarus rising again in the flesh in that moment could happen. Even though she acknowledges that Jesus could ask the Father for anything. I mean, but a life? Surely. Of course, that's too much for Jesus to ask. So she doesn't ask for that when Jesus comes. Recently, I was out shopping with one of my roommates, and she was approached by two women. These women were sharing with her about the state of the world, asking about her faith and talking to her about the end times, that they were coming. But when you think about the end times coming and righting yourself with God, the way that they were explaining it, it's that the hope comes with the second coming of Jesus' return to earth, or just this new life, kingdom of God and the resurrection of believers. Something in the future, something to look towards, something that hasn't happened yet. But church, I ask you, is it too late? Does sometimes the resurrection feel too late? Is Jesus coming into the world too late? Because there's already been too much death, too much pain, and too much grief. Even thinking of what's been most recent with the COVID pandemic, there were over 7 million recorded deaths. Do you not think that for those people there was a Mary and a Martha hoping for Jesus to come, to act, and to save them, to prevent? And what about the thousands that have already died in America's war on Iran? Is it not too late for them or for us as a nation? Is it not too late? Because God, damage has already been done. For those to look for help towards the end times, they do it because they look upon this world and they say it's too late for this world. Let's wait for God for the next one. And as it was said in Ezekiel, our bones are dried up. Our hope is often lost, and sometimes it feels that we are cut completely off from God. Our bones are dry, our hearts are weary, and our voices are hoarse in our cries to God. For the evil of this world is overwhelming, and our loss keeps us in our place. When I imagine dry bones, I imagine skeletons tenuously connected, that even the slightest movement or change would make the skeleton collapse into a pile of bones on the floor. The bones are dry. They have no muscles for movement, no blood to pump. They're not bringing new life through oxygen in and out of the vessels. The bones are dry. They cannot move, and they don't want to move for fear of utter collapse. Inflexible, fragile. But when Martha is pulled into the direction of waiting for the afterlife, of waiting for the resurrection, Jesus pulls her back into the present, to the now, and shows her that miracles in life can happen in the face of death. That God's power is even more beyond what we could ever imagine. And that it was God's power that brought every being into life, that created these sinews of the body and the processes to sustain life in our arms, in our feet, to move our hands, to hold our mouth in place, to speak. The one which brought us into being, both created us to be and is the master of it, of all time, strength, all possibility, and all life. Martha had begun to rest in her faith, which isn't wrong. But Jesus told her to get up and watch the tomb be opened. When she thought she knew how the world worked, the processes of it, when she found the resting place in her heart in the contentment and satisfaction of the afterlife, Jesus declared, "Here is the life here and now. Open your eyes, open your heart to the possibilities." And that is what it means to work a miracle, to perform something no one else thought possible, something outstanding. And that is what Jesus did. Not only in the rising of Lazarus, but also in the rising of the heart, mind, and spirit of the people there. And church, we need a rising of the spirit. Awakening us not just to the fact that we are alive in this world, but a revival to new life, which can flow from our hearts straight from the Spirit, and the power of God into the world around us. In Jesus' actions of miracles, we are reminded not to save ourselves only for the end, but to continue to live in the here and now. In that, even though the here and the now stinks with the smell of death, that does not mean that the world has been won by the darkness. No, it means that what is coming next we couldn't imagine. So to wait with the possibility of that. And even after waiting, to ponder, what do you hope for from God? Do not give up that spirit. He is doing something yet in you, and in those around you, and in the world. And like in the words of angels when they come on earth, do not be afraid. Do not be anxious. Because God is never late. It is all in God's time. To know the ramifications of God's dwelling in the flesh requires that the fullest expression of God's love be experienced now. It's not for me, it's from Fortress Bible Commentary, but that's pretty good. God's dwelling in the flesh is God's love to be experienced